Hello and welcome back to my tutorial series on Crusader Kings 2. I'm your host Imperialis, and today we are going, well, at least for this little mini update here, or mini episode I guess, going to be taking a look at the various DLCs that are available for Crusader Kings 2. Um, so you can see down here, I've got the list of all of the different DLCs that I own. And basically, I own everything except for Rajas of India. Now, if you're a new player coming at this, you're probably looking at the list of DLC and how much it all costs when you add it all together, and are absolutely horrified. Um, and you're probably asking yourself, okay, now what do I actually need? And the truth is none. Like I mentioned in the, well, I didn't mention, but I wrote it in after the fact in the first video, I very deliberately disabled all of the DLC that would actually affect gameplay. So I disabled Legacy of Rome, um, Sons of Abraham, Old Gods, the Republic, Sword of Islam, all of that sort of stuff I disabled. What I left enabled was the music, the unit packs, the face packs, things like that, because they don't actually affect the game, and you can just sort of take a look at what they look like. I also left the Europe Universalis 4 converter enabled because that won't affect anything, and I left the ruler designer enabled because, again, that won't affect anything. So you're probably asking yourself, and it gets asked on the forums all the time, what sort of DLC do I need? And like I said before, the answer is none. You can play a perfectly good game just with the vanilla version of CK2. But if you are interested in picking any of it up, the first two that I would suggest taking a look at would be Sons of Abraham and Legacy of Rome. Both Legacy of Rome and the Sons of Abraham make some enhancements to the core game. They build on what the game already has in the base game, which is the Christian nobility. Sons of Abraham allows you to do stuff like go on pilgrimages. It brings up a whole bunch of cool religious things. It lets you recruit additional religious militant orders, stuff like that. Makes your dealings with the Pope a lot more complex. There's actually the Papal Conclave, and they elect popes, and all of that sort of stuff gets added in with Sons of Abraham. Legacy of Rome is a less significant update if you're planning on playing a Catholic ruler. It is a very significant update if you plan on doing anything in the Byzantine Empire. But the other thing it does, or it introduces, is the concept of retinues, which is basically a little standing army that you can create and it's not part of your levies. They can be raised when you declare war, that sort of stuff. And by having Legacy of Rome enabled, it gives you some more flexibility in how you wage war, basically. After that, the big ones you're looking at are the Content Edition ones. And actually, sorry, I lied. There is one additional one DLC that I never purchased because I never saw the need for it, and that's Sunset Invasion. But of the content editions, the big ones you'd want to be looking at there would be these three: the Old Gods, the Republic, and the Sword of Islam. I can't really speak for Rajas of India because I don't own it. But what the Old Gods does, it's probably the best of the lot, is it extends the timeline back to 863, and it allows you to play as pagans. And the pagans have some really unique mechanics to them. The Norse, for example, can raid coastal cities and basically do all of the Norsey type things that you'd expect the Vikings to do. The other pagan groups, like there's the Tatars, there's the... That's my phone. Give me half a sec here. Okay, apologies. It's my mother-in-law looking for my wife. But anyhow, we were talking about the Old Gods, and Yeah, so it's a really neat DLC. It adds quite a bit of gameplay and makes for just a really interesting game. It's probably one of my favorite modes to play in because the whole map of Europe looks completely different in uh, 860 than it does in 1066. By 1066, at the end of the day, it looks a fair bit like what the modern map of Europe does, whereas in the old gods in the ninth century, it's pretty weird, and some very strange things can end up happening. The Republic allows you to play as different trade republics, so the Republic of Venice, the Republic of Genoa, what else? There's the Gotland, which is up in the Baltic Sea, and introduces a whole sort of trade mechanic to the game that is a very, very different playstyle from any of the traditional ones. Fundamentally, a lot of the other, like whether you're Muslim or uh, pagan or anything like that, the fundamental game remains very similar, but it is very, very different in the Republic. You're more concerned about gathering wealth than you are prestige, and it's an interesting game. And then the Sword of Islam, it lets you play as a Muslim ruler. The, and they've got some unique mechanics as well. They're probably not quite as different as the others, but it's definitely a worthwhile DLC to consider just because Islam was such a massive, massive influence on Europe at the time. And so being able to play as a Muslim ruler and try to do hold off the Reconquista and take over the Iberian Peninsula and that sort of stuff is really, really neat to do. So, um, the other one that I briefly mentioned here, the saying that I don't own, is called Sunset Invasion. And the reason I didn't buy that is because it struck me as kind of silly. It's basically an opportunity for the Aztecs to invade Europe. Um, some of it was actually done as a bit of a game balance thing, where Eastern Europe has to deal with a Mongol invasion. That just happens, and the Mongols can do a lot of damage and stomp all over, and generally make a big mess at Eastern Europe. But the West doesn't have any kind of issues like that. The Sunset Invasion changes that, and so all of a sudden Western Europe and England and France and Spain and places like that will have uh, these Jaguar warriors and other Aztecs showing up on their shores and causing all sorts of chaos that way. But it's kind of silly and ahistorical, and it's the only real ahistorical DLC that they have, so I don't particularly care for it. Everything else you see here are basically music, portrait, and unit packs, and they're just straight up cosmetic. They don't affect gameplay at all. I like them. I think they give the game quite a bit of character. I think they make it look a lot better, but they're definitely not going to affect your gameplay experience. Um, I've even got one disabled here, the Mediterranean portraits. I do not like them. I find them very creepy looking. Plant them right firmly in the uncanny valley, in my mind at least. But yeah, so that's an overview of the DLC. Feel free to ask any questions. I'm probably going to end up picking up Rajas of India at some point here, but I haven't felt the overwhelming urge to try playing anything out that far east yet, so not really a major effect on my little world. But anyhow, I'm going to end this video here. This is just going to be a real short little update. And yeah, we will see you guys in the next episode. Cheers.